Speedrunning, for me, has always been amazing to watch, but has never felt like something I'd want to be a part of. Not in a bad way, of course, it just seems like the kind of dedication required to truly learn how a game works to such a fundamental level where you can get through it as quickly as possible is a very specific way to get enjoyment out of it, and it seems like it requires months, if not years, of practice. It requires the dedication you might see out of a fighting game, but the only competitor is the clock, and I'm a busy gamer. I have many games to play. I can't be sitting here playing Half-Life over and over again until I can beat it in 15 minutes. But wait! Angel Matrix screams out into the night. What if there were a game about speedrunning that didn't require months of practice? Well, Angel Matrix, may I just say, you've certainly got me. Where do I sign up? I holler, leaning out of my window. And it's like emo goth edgy anime where I think someone actually calls something epic unironically, Angel Matrix continues, and I say, oh no, in response, but it's already too late and the Faustian bargain has been signed. So Neon White, insert joke about my skin tone here, is a game about speedrunning. It's also a game about heaven, anime, demons, anime, and hell, read anime. The premise is refreshingly simple. Every year, sinners, or neons as they're called, get to come up from hell to clear errant demons from heaven over the course of 12 days, and the neon who both survives and kills the most demons gets to stay in heaven until the next judgment. Neon White is one such sinner, and he's got amnesia, so he's competing with all the people he knew in life but knows no longer, and most of whom seem to think he's a bit of a jerk. Is their loathing justified? Will Neon White kill all of the demons? I suppose we'll just have to find out by playing the game. And to be clear, it is a very, very fun game to play. In the borderline rhythmic, reflexive, don't think, feel way, it has a similar feeling to those treasure-chasing sections from Rayman Origins, and I loved those. I loved them. Hell, I loved Rayman Origins and Rayman Legends. I love them so much. Give me a moment, I'll be okay. I'm sure they'll announce new one any day now. Sorry, alright, so Neon White's an excellent gestalt of an FPS in a puzzle game, except there's only ever really one puzzle, and the solution is always go faster. I would hesitate to say any of the problems presented by Neon White are themselves hard problems to solve, but that's okay, they're not meant to be. As a speedrunning game, it's more about the flow. You make it through once, likely with a gold medal, then run it again and shave precious seconds off of your runtime by finding a faster route, which are usually fairly telegraphed. Or, if you've got player hints on, openly telegraphed. Fortunately, you can toggle both of them and the player ghost off if you so choose, so you're not literally haunted by previous success. The initial route is almost always easy to follow, but the fun in Neon White is in carving that time down as low as you can manage, and finding the alternate routes is where the game shines. In quite a few levels there was very much a sense of, oh, that's the trick, which was always very gratifying. Of course, that's not to say it's particularly tricky to find them. If you're blasting through the standard route and find a sequence of the level that's surprisingly devoid of demons, chances are it's a skippable part of the route. Not all of the levels adhere to this, but usually at the end of my first successful run, I'd have a pretty good idea of where the alternate route might be and how to tackle it. More often than not, I was right, too, which means the levels are either designed extremely well, or I'm just that good of a gamer, and I think we all know the answer to that. These may not be difficult problems to crack, but they're very fun to optimize, and the dopamine rush of seeing the green number saying, you did it faster, is always a potent one. You'll get more or less out of Neon depending on your proclivity towards that kind of thing, of course. But you're rarely going to be spending more than 5 or 10 minutes on any given stage, which means progress can be rewarding without feeling overly halting. It's very slick, and that extends into other mechanics in the game too. There's a lot of very telling little touches that make that optimization more enjoyable. There are dozens of ways to eke out a faster time, all telegraphed and implemented well enough for a savvy player to be able to catch on pretty quickly. When you're on water, you move faster, but since looking down to check would be a pain, instead they add a sound effect that sounds like something revving up, a white border to the screen, and speed lines to show you're moving more quickly. Strafing slows you down slightly, so it's faster to turn using the mouse than using your movement keys, which creates a fantastic feeling of momentum, like you're a missile just barely under control. play Ghost Trick. When more guns are added into the mix, it can become truly breathtaking, as that's a weird thing to say in a vacuum, let me elaborate. The guns in Neon White are represented as cards, each appearing in the corner of the screen in solid block color, and each has an alternate fire that throws the gun away, but in return allows you to perform some form of maneuver. The assault rifle fires a grenade that you can use to rocket jump, the pistol gives you a double jump, the shotgun lets you fire yourself off in the direction you're aiming, etc. The puzzle element comes in trying to figure out how to conserve or otherwise manipulate the cards in a level to most smoothly make your way through it, holding onto a pistol so you can jump up an otherwise impassable ledge, for example. The drive to improve my time was a very compelling one for me. As you can see here, I'm technically done with this level. I've got the ace medal and the present, but I'm at the bottom of my friend's leaderboard. And, well, I can't let that stand. Because I, you see, am a gamer. And gamers never lose. Initially, I didn't like the idea of firing a card instead of a gun, but in practice, it's a perfect solution. A big firearm model would clutter the screen and distract your eyes, and the simplicity of the cards and their assigned colors makes knowing what you have in your hand something you can remain aware of just through your peripheral vision, which is good since you need access to that information in fractions of a second, sort of like an extreme version of that toy for babies where you push the blue button to make the hippo come out. It helps that the guns all have excellent reports as well. They all feel shockingly good to fire. The sound effects are clean and sharp, and the impacts really register thanks to a bit of cursory hit stun. And that makes sense in a game that has aesthetics that are, overall, to quote someone from the 90s, major killer. Neon White's a game that, more than anything else, feels like someone took Toonami and crushed it into a video game pulp and all, which is perhaps strange for me to say, living as I do in a place that got a pale, bastardized imitation of the Toonami that aired over the pond. But I saw a couple of episodes of Naruto when on vacation in Florida, so I think I can claim that heritage well enough. A lot of the Toonami comparisons have to do, of course, with the fact that the protagonist is voiced by Mr. Toonami himself, Steve Blum, but the whole thing really feels like it's a Western take on the kinds of shows that would air on that halcyon channel of days gone. I think that's been something of a make or break thing about Neon White with a lot of people, and I'd say that's very fair. It's got a certain vibe to it that feels like it could be very much abrasive, just like Honey Pop. It's less directly anime and more a Western take on the style, and as a result plays it very broadly. When I was streaming it to a friend of mine to show it off, he heard a line from Neon Violet and made a noise somewhere between retching and inhaling a balloon's worth of helium, which is both very telling and worth the price of admission alone, I'd say. A prevailing sentiment I felt about Neon White is that it's sort of a bastard child of two different eras. The gameplay feels like it's a distinct product of contemporary culture. I'm sure I'm not the first to invoke this neologism, but if games like Doom 2016 and Dusk are called boomer shooters, then I suppose a game like this might be well described as a zoomer shooter. I'm not googling that to see if anyone else has already coined that term, because blissful ignorance is a delightful state in which to live. The writing is fairly on the nose from time to time, and at its worst, the bar feels like it's lying somewhere in the bad fanfiction zone, but I suppose when you're writing a story about angsty but cool anime people fighting demons in heaven, there's a certain amount of that you're just not going to be able to avoid. And there's something about how committed they are to it that's oddly disarming. A lot of the time a joke wouldn't land, and I'd roll my eyes and whip out my phone and say, whoa, this one's going in the cringe compilation, only to then later think about the joke I did not like and find it annoyingly funny, like when Neon Red calls White a baby, and he gets very upset about that and insists he's not a baby 6 or 7 times in a row, the recollection of which caused a friend and I to actually laugh. Is there a buried charm beneath it all that's finally getting to me? Is it just Stockholm Syndrome? Or am I just a crazy person? Yes. I can't tell if the tone feels sincere or manufactured, but the fact I'm not going to outright say it wasn't very good despite how rough it was striking me early on is probably a sign I eventually warmed to it. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, frankly, but I can, at the very least, appreciate the dedication. Now, I know a lot of people really like Machine Girl, so I don't want to ruffle any feathers with what I'm about to say. I understand that the music is fitting, it's ethereal, and has a twisted nature to it, it's fantastic for the setting and the theme, it works on a metaphorical level, and it suits the game it's scored for, but man, when I was running through these levels, I just couldn't help but hear Carpenter Brutt's Paradise Warfare in my head, maybe Hotline Miami Miami's just hardwired me into thinking these kinds of reflexive, fast-paced Twitch action games need dark synth to back them up. But if nothing else, Neon White taught me that I am a vibes-based gamer. Slap on some Brute, and I'm gaming, baby. Look at this side by side. It's got some Persona in its DNA, some Toonami, as previously mentioned, and a little pinch of Paradise Lost for fun. It's a textured experience, sort of like an evening around town where you also happen to be accosted by a violent thug, or tripping over that awful knee-shredding rubber they put on decks near rivers. The story is oddly compelling, even if it's about a group of witty, sardonic criminals trying to kill demons in heaven, and the characters were somehow both one-note and charming in equal measure. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it in two very distinct halves and in two very distinct ways, and your mileage is going to vary depending on both your tolerance for one and your enjoyment of the other. Neon White is kind of analogous to actual speedrunning in the same way that Divekick is to actual fighting games. It's something that allows the player to enjoy the feeling of engaging with a specific skill-intensive style of play, just with relatively low time and effort overhead, unless you really want to go all in. Where Divekick allows a newcomer to experience fighting game concepts like footsies and frame data, Neon White allows someone with no experience speedrunning to experience things like clock and go fast. And that alone is cool to experience, especially as it tactfully avoids entering the Lang zone, on top of also being much better than Divekick. It's a tremendously fun game with excellent replay value, especially if you care about optimization, and it's also a peculiar visual novel hybrid thing that is going to be harder to swallow for some than others, but if I manage to get past it, I would like to think most could. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a few microseconds to shave off of a run of the tutorial stage. Stay gold. Bang. Toonami joke.